The nine-sided circle, for those who would rather be awake than entertained.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another session of Wild Hijinks on a Sunday evening. I trust you're all doing well, and that everything is good for you all. And tonight, I am getting all of my various devices open so I can see things as they go. Kyle will prompt me on some things. I can see notes on the other things. And for some reason, Vivian can still not comment. What is up with that? Okay, so we got that taken care of. Got the tablet here. And hijinks shall indeed ensue. So, tonight, I want to start the talk with something that will be maybe interesting. I hope interesting, because it's interesting to me, and is the idea of vertical versus horizontal teaching. Now, what do I mean by that? As I actually stole this from an old friend by the name of Bob Wilson, who pointed out one day years ago that true communication is only possible between equals. Think about that for a second. If you are in a hierarchical situation, it is not safe for you to tell the truth. And even more important than that, it is often in your best interest to lie. You know, if your boss asks you how they look today, and you tell them the truth, they might not like you. So, what do? Excuse me. You falsify the information just a bit. The animals are restless tonight. So if you hear all sorts of tappity, tappity, tappity across the floor, that's just the dog and the cats doing their thing. Now, this is a problem when it comes to, especially to, for lack of a better phrase, spiritual teachers. Because most spiritual teaching, for lack of a better word, I really dislike that word, but we're kind of stuck with it, is set up hierarchically. You have the teacher at the top, and then you have everybody else down at the bottom. And what happens is that communication breaks down radically in a very short amount of time, because if you are in the position of no power, yes, Scott, that's exactly right. Subordinates can never feel safe, not to mention they're subordinates. Yeah, if you are in a position of being the one without authority, you are going to tell the person in authority what they want to hear. And no matter how good your intentions are, that's going to happen. And the teacher will never, ever know the truth about their students. Now, they're going to tell you that they have all sorts of spiritual powers and that they can see the truths about all of this kind of stuff and see into your heart and all of that. But if they did, they would know that they're in a hierarchical situation which is not working for them. So they don't, no matter what they say. True teaching only happens between equals. Think about that. How is that even possible? I mean, that's such a radical diversion from the standard operating procedures in any school. But I will tell you that there are some schools where that is the truth. They are few. They are far between. You rarely find them because, for one thing, you can't make any money. And all them their gurus need to eat. So that's to start a problem. Second, if someone becomes a teacher so that they can be on the top of the heap, they do not welcome equals. Yes, there's a great line in what was it? Meetings with Remarkable Men, one of Gurdjieff's books, where one of the people who Gurdjieff finds who is wise to this stuff says, yes, the teacher and the student, so-called, create the teaching together. A teacher is a teacher because they have more experience, not because they have more authority. Especially any kind of external authority. Think about that for a second. There is no external authority that matters in a true teaching situation. And you have to watch out for people who like the idea of the titles. So here's one thing you can know. If you go into a school or any kind of a teaching group and you have the guru sitting up there dispensing his or her wisdom, and the guru who has been teaching for 20 years, and the guru has no people who he or she has created to be at his level, then there is something wrong in that school. And I have seen this over and over and over again. And it doesn't matter what the modality of teaching is. When you find these, you'll notice, because if somebody started getting as good as the teacher would drive them away. I had a friend who did this over and over again to his students, to the point where the only thing he was left with was sycophants. And they weren't telling him that he was full of shit because they were sycophants. And trust me, if I don't tell you any other thing that is true tonight, the truth is that a teacher needs to hear when they're full of shit more than the student does. Let me repeat that. A teacher needs to hear when they're full of shit more than the student does. Now, a lot of teachers get around this by game rules. Like there is the infallibility rule. The Pope is infallible in matters of doctrine, for instance. That's a game rule. How do we know that the Pope is infallible? Because the College of Cardinals says so. Now, that would also imply that the College of Cardinals must be infallible. How do we know that they're infallible? Because the Pope says so. And, well, I could, easily pick on the Christian church. This is true for more teachers than it is not. And I'm bringing this up because I have run into this a couple of times this week, where I have seen people who have created hierarchical situations where they're on top, they're special, and everybody is a supplicant to them. No real teacher needs supplicants. Y'all know what a supplicant is, right? Think, what is it? Is it Oliver Twist or David Copperfield? Yeah, it's got to be Oliver Twist, who comes to the head of the orphanage and says, "Please, may I have some more," when he's starving and they only give him a little bit of food. That makes him a supplicant. So, as an informed consumer, you must examine teachers the way you would examine anything else. Let me tell you a story. Some of you have heard this story, and even if you have heard it, you could hear it again, and I'll probably tell it again. Years ago, long time ago, in a land not that far away, because I'm pretty close to that land right now, my teacher sent me to train with the Mevlevis. The Mevlevis are the whirling dervishes, and he thought that I would benefit from learning some of their practices. So he found a Mevlevi sheikh who would put up with me and sent me there. And I spent a couple of years hanging out, learning how to do the turn and all of this kind of stuff. And this is a very formal process. It takes about 2.5 years to really learn. And one of the things that happens is doing the turn right puts you in a pretty cool altered state of consciousness. It pretty much hypercharges you. And I think it probably makes you smarter, or at least more intuitive. So I see in the local newspaper that there is a Gurdjieff group in town, and this was back in the mid-70s. That's 1970s, not 1870s. And they're going to be doing a talk, and it's on the night of the turning class, but it's after the turning class. So I rush from the turning class to the place where there is this talk, and this is this Gurdjieff Ouspensky group. And they do this whole spiel about all of the levels of man, and man is a machine, and all of this. And I'm like, I'm following along with them, and how their teacher, who is this guy who lives up in Northern California, has made it to man 4, man 5, whatever the highest level of man is. And since he has been that, he has been teaching. And, they pulled out tarot cards and all sorts of different stuff to make their illustrations. It was a fun time. And then at the end, they asked if there were any questions. And my hand went up. And I didn't even intend it to go up. And I said, how long did it take for your teacher to become man number whatever he was? We'll call it man number 5. And they said he's trained with his teachers for 10 years before he became man number 5. And then I said, and how long has he been teaching? And he's been teaching now for 20 years. And then I said, in that time, how many people has he raised up to man number 5? And they looked at me like I was speaking Martian. They looked at me like I was completely out of my mind to ask a question like that. And the head guy said, no one. And I politely stood up and thanked them very much and turned around and walked out, because if he couldn't even train one person to his level in twice as long as it took him, he was worthless as a teacher. And here's the thing. Real teachers work to duplicate themselves. They work to raise their students up to their level. They can't raise their student beyond their level. And if their student is capable of going beyond them, they have to find somebody else to teach them. But if a teacher is not regularly creating finished students who are at the level of the teacher's teaching is fundamentally flawed and absolutely worthless. Let me repeat that. If the teacher is not creating students at their level on a fairly regular basis, then their teaching is fundamentally flawed and absolutely worthless. Kind of a problem, ain't it? So, this is what teaching looks like within Maya, within the illusionary world, within samsara. There is a whole different kind of teaching that it is possible to become a part of, and that is a teaching that is horizontal, a teaching where there is no guru and there is no guree. There is somebody who has more skill in the field, who has the willingness and capability of teaching that skill to other people. Does that make sense? Or have I shocked you all into speechlessness and you're going to go and hang out with the Pope? So, which is it? Yes, that is the case. No martial arts teacher wants to, well, not very many martial arts teachers want to yeah, that's my kind of teacher, Scott. Scott says the master of my capoeira system is known as the maestre of maestres because he graduated so many students to become maestres. And somebody, could it be? Yes, Vivian. Vivian understands too. Vivian is sending me messages because she cannot, for whatever reason, post directly to this, and she also says it also applies to teaching anything to anyone too. And yes, it does. Yes, Laura makes a very good point. Some people may be better at teaching, and some people, though they learn really well, may not be good teachers. This is something you find in the martial arts a lot. The best fighters are oftentimes not the best teachers. And I've seen this any number of times. And actually, the martial art that I have devoted the most time to actually has a teacher's curriculum. You can go through the entire system and be a finished student, learn the entire system. That doesn't make you a teacher. You're only a teacher if you go through the teacher's curriculum and learn how to teach. Because a black belt or whatever is the equivalent in any system doesn't mean you know anything about how to teach. And it doesn't happen by osmosis very often. Any good exceptions to that trend? Aaron, I'm not sure which trend you're talking about. The trend of doers and teachers? Sealot, Scott, not swordsmanship. Swordsmanship at this point, at least in this country, is so new. That people are still figuring it out. So, this is something that I think is important because horizontal teaching is the only way I know of to produce free human beings and to bring people to adulthood. The problem with vertical teaching is that vertical teaching basically makes you a child. Now, I'm going to have to ask all of you guys up. Here it goes. Everything stalled on my screen for a second. Yeah, something is going on here. My screen has frozen and unfrozen a couple of times. And hopefully you're still hearing the dulcet tones of my voice. If not, somebody say, I can't hear you. Of course, it's incredibly stupid for me to say that if you can't hear me. Because so what I'm going to do is send a message to Kyle. And see if I am still broadcasting. Okay, Laura hears me. Do you have video? So, I am taking it that you can all hear me because this is important. I'm also taking it as the dark side of the force is attempting to mess with our broadcasting here. It's probably not true, but it sounds really good. So, vertical teaching keeps you at the level of a child. Think about that for a second. Vertical teaching keeps you at the level of a child. There's a reason that the Pope is called Pope. You know what Pope means, right? Pope and pop and papa are all from the same root. So, father figure. There's a couple of reasons that the priests always call you my child. And there is a reason that you always call the priest's father. If you look at the language of this, and this is not, this is not exclusive to the Christian church. The idea of the teacher being the father or the mother is pretty universal, which means that you are constantly the child. And if you're constantly at the level of the child, you never reach human adulthood. And then if you do awaken, you're crippled. Now, this is something I've mentioned before, too, and I'm going to come back to it now. The idea that if you achieve full awakening while still in a larval state, you run a very, very high risk of crippling yourself, because you do not have the structures necessary to continue functioning in the world in an awake state. Consequently, you might find yourself sitting in a cave meditating for the rest of your life, not eating, not drinking, and having disciples come in once a week and dust you off. The only way that they know you're still alive is because your hair is still growing. This is not a worthwhile state. Believe it or not, some people think it's a worthwhile state. There are people in the Himalayas who take care of people like this and worship them. And to me, it seems like the most useless form of pseudo-adoration that you can come up with. I mean, what's the point? So, if you want to be healthy in your awakening, you got to do that adulting thing first. And the adulting thing means that you have to literally mature yourself from childish behaviors that you've been running your whole life. And you cannot do that with any amount of alacrity if you have put yourself in a situation that requires that you be subservient to another human being. Real adults have their own agency. And real schools do not order. They just offer. And it is up to the agency of the students involved to learn the lessons. Years ago, I had a school, and in the main room of the school was a sign that said, "If you learn anything here, it's your own damn fault." And I think that that is probably the best description of a real school that I have ever come up with. All of your learning is on you. All of your choices are on you. You must not, under any circumstances, give your authority away to anybody else. So John is asking a good question here. John says, Do certain subjects require a hierarchical teaching? In a language course, students stand to benefit a great deal if treated more as an equal. However, my art teacher has a more vertical approach, which somehow seems to work. It depends on what you are teaching and what the outcome is. In the normal world, you can have a vertical teaching structure. So your art teacher says, do this, don't do that. It sometimes doesn't work as well because if it's too vertical, it basically turns people off. And you don't actually learn to do art, you learn to mimic the teacher. And there's a difference there. There is a difference between doing your own art and mimicking what the teacher wants you to do. So the question is, can the teacher foster your creativity along with teaching you technique? If they can't, then there's a problem. If you are teaching high school, you need a more or less hierarchical structure because you're teaching children. If you're teaching college, you need much less of a hierarchical structure. Though Nick might disagree with me on that. And I wouldn't argue with him because I've sat in on a couple of his classes. But if you are teaching towards adults, a vertical structure gets in the way and makes it virtually impossible. Did that help, John? All right, so that was an excellent question. Are there any more questions before I continue on just rambling at you with a stream of consciousness monologue? What do you got for me? So, we are conditioned to be taught as if we were children. Because within the school system, within the church system, within most of the systems that we have grown up in, that's what it does. It conditions us to be kids. And what we need is teachers in all subjects that break that conditioning and condition us to learn as adults. One important question is, where does that start? What's the first thing that you do? As a teacher, and any of my students here will tell you that we have the talk. And the talk is about this is not a hierarchical system. You have to be within your own agency. You have to be responsible for yourself, for your own choices. You have to weigh everything I say with a small Siberian salt mine and form your own opinions, and then run your opinions by me. And if your opinions need to be challenged, I'll challenge them for you. But they must also be respected. That's the first step to teaching. Yeah, I should, as a caveat, say that again, within the Catholic Church, there is this concept of reaching a certain age and all of a sudden being responsible for your sins. They're all about the sins. But before that, you're innocent. After that, you're not. And I think that there is a little bit of truth to this. There is a point where you have to be responsible for the choices that you make. And it seems to happen somewhere in later adolescence. The Catholics have all sorts of stuff around, sexual awakenings and all of this kind of stuff as the point where you are no longer an innocent child. But I'm not sure that really makes a lot of sense. But there is a point where the adulting happens, or it should start happening. And the culture that we are existing in now is one where that no longer exists hardly at all. There is nobody is taking responsibility for their own damn choices anymore, is what it looks like. And I don't know if that makes sense to you, but to me, and okay. Just checking on some stuff there. So, what do you do with all of this? That's the next and very interesting question. First thing you do, put all of your teachers, all of your spiritual guides, everybody through the same criteria that you would a plumber. When you look for somebody to do some plumbing repairs on your house, you go to Yelp or some other place and you read the reviews. At least if you're me, you do that. And you see what people say. And what I'm looking for is, here's somebody who fixed the problem. And you need to do that with your spiritual teachers. It needs to be, okay, here's this person, and in the last 5 years, 7 or 8 of his students have reached the state of abiding non-dual awareness, or whatever it is, and are now doing what he's doing, or are off doing their own thing. Yes, Scott, you hit the nail on the head. Scott points out that our culture is pretty schizophrenic about being an adult. And I can't think of a single argument against his position. He's absolutely right. So here we have this idea. If you are interested in studying with a teacher, the first thing that you have to do is go, can this person, first, is this person where I think they are? And oftentimes you can't know that. But the thing that you can know is, has this person produced finished students who he says are at his level or state? If this teacher has not done that, save your money, save your time. Does that make sense? Because I think that in some ways, this is one of the most important things to know when dealing with today's, what I like to think of as the spiritual marketplace. We're dealing with all of these people who have something to sell, and you have to know what you're getting. And in case you're wondering, and if you're not, you should be, yes, as a matter of fact, I've produced several students who have reached, who have graduated, who are either finished students or teachers in their own rights now. This is one of the things in my life that I look at and go, yeah, I actually have done something that's kind of useful. So, the second criteria that you need to look at with a teacher is, do they keep adding shit to the system? Now, Laura is going to really recognize this one because she had a martial arts teacher at one time who was constantly adding stuff. You know, every year there would be new curriculum that you had to learn. And there was no finish. There was no, okay, you've learned the system. The system is open-ended. And that means you'll never learn the system. One system that I trained under, it was so complicated that the guy who created it had to train 12 different inheritors, each of which had 1/12 of the system, because nobody could learn the whole damn thing. And that's a problem, because when he died, you know, there were people who knew the entire system, but there was not one person who knew the entire system. Or all of the people who knew the 1/12 of the system didn't know the other 11/12. So it becomes a problem. So if you run across a teacher that keeps adding stuff, the elders or the masters or the hidden prophets or whatever they are have just released this new information that you must learn. In order to get to the next level. The level that you were at, that I told you that was really, really cool before, is still really cool, but it's not really where you want to go. You want to go to this next thing. This is a process. Yeah, Laura's laughing at this. She knows who I'm talking about. This is a process that I call protecting one's rice bowl. The problem with having a student be finished is that once they're finished, they don't need you anymore. And if they don't need you, how are you going to pay your bills? Think about that. In my great school experiment, I did this thing. The curriculum lasted for 5 years. The first year, you paid full price. If you came back the second year, you only paid 3/4 of the cost of the year. If you came back the third year, you paid only half. If you came back the fourth year, you paid only 1/4. If you came back the fifth year, you got to do the fifth year for free. And if you stuck around for a sixth year, I would pay you. And I did. And it was very interesting to see how that worked out. Yeah, Laura, it's almost always make up their own or find it on the internet somewhere and file the serial numbers off, give it a new paint job, and claim that the hidden masters gave it to you. So, if a teacher is a real teacher, they graduate their students, and they don't keep adding curriculum so that the students have to keep paying them to be there. And Scott asks a very good question. How about evolving knowledge? The black belts who learn from my original karate master move differently depending upon during what stage of his development they studied. And that's an important thing. But they all knew the same thing. It's not like there was some new level of black beltness that was added to the system, right? The teacher just learned more. And Nancy points out that a teacher continues learning. This is absolutely true. They continue learning, they continue improving the system, but they don't have to add levels to the system in order to keep students. When I put the notice up for this talk, and I spaced out and didn't put the description in, but it basically said you have 3 choices, especially with teachers. You are either subservient, or you are a master over, or you're a companion. Think about that. Those are your 3 choices. They match the affirming, denying, and reconciling quite nicely. Now, when the student-teacher relationship is one of companions, rather than one is a master and the other is a servant, you have an entirely different situation going on. And what happens then is that the people involved, the so-called students and the so-called teachers, work together and take the teaching further. When I work with the people who I think of as my proteges, 2 of which are here tonight, and that would be Kyle and Nick, we work together on stuff. It's not me front-loading information to them. We're in a position where I know more of the material than they do. Well, probably not as much anymore as it used to be. But in the beginning, I knew more of the material. Now, they know enough of the material that I work with that it's a collaboration. And we are definitely taking the teaching further, all of us together. And each of us is honing our skills and our knowledge. But yeah, the base, I have not needed to add stuff to what anybody is doing. And that's kind of the big thing. I think of Scientology, because Scientology is notorious for adding all of these levels. As soon as they get everybody up to like OT3, then, oh, wait, we found these documents that Elron left behind, and now it's OT5. Or, oh, now it's OT10, or any of this kind of stuff. There's always another level. Yes, and Laura, I would also like to point out that you graduated yourself in spite of having teachers who did not want you to graduate. So, in a real school, the students and teachers, so-called, are companions to one another. There are no servants, there are no masters. And this is such a foreign concept to us that it is often very, very difficult to wrap our minds around it. Oh, no worries, Laura. Credit where credit's due. I knew you were a teacher way before you did, I think. Or at least a little bit before. And teachers and students operate through their own authority. Let me say that again, too. Teachers and students operate through their own authority. There is no need for deference. And there isn't. There is a need for respect, and the respect must be mutual. But deference actually gets in the way of teaching. And I have to say, speaking from the Sufi perspective, there are all these Sufis out there, where you have these great sheikhs with the gigantic turbans who walk around in funny clothes, and all of their students follow them around and kiss their hands and wash their feet and do all of this stuff. And it's all very touching, but it is based on this hierarchical thinking that was not existent in the original Sufism. It just wasn't. And you will find it difficult to get anywhere in that kind of situation. Scott, as far as I can tell, that's an absolute fundamental truth. Deference gets in the way of learning. Sometimes, if you are not being deferent, the learning can be painful, but you will learn. So, no deference, lots of respect. Respect does not get in the way of learning. Respect has to be mutual. The person who is acting as the teacher has to have as much or more respect for the students as the students have for the teacher. And the thing that they have to respect is the student's own agency. If you can't do that, you can't help them into their own adulthood. All right, that's pretty much what I had to say tonight. So now it's commercial time again. I will remind you that the Ultimate Enneagram course is still out there, and if you don't have a copy of it, you should. And you can find it at ultimateenneagram.com. So if you go there, it's a really good piece of work. And I still have this one slot left open for my September special of 4 or 6 sessions of private tutelage with me. Just one left. Somebody might want it. And you can ask anybody who you know who has one whether or not they think it's worth it, and hopefully they will tell you the truth, and hopefully they'll say yes. But anyway, there is that one slot open, and it is basically half price off of my usual consulting / private teaching fee, and that is 4 sessions for $200 or 6 sessions for $300. So that's my commercial. Check out the Ultimate Enneagram. Somebody grab up the last slot in my time, and I'll be a happy camper, and hopefully so will you. So, last questions before I sign off for the evening. Last questions going once. Last questions going twice. So, next Sunday, I'm planning on doing something very special. And it might make you crazy, and it might not, but it will be fun. At least I'll have fun. You might not have fun, but I'm going to be having a ball. So, no questions? No last thoughts for me? Here's something. As always, Laura, you are extremely welcome, and it tickles me to no end to have you keep coming back every week because, well, you know why. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for putting up with me yet again. Come back next Sunday, same bat time, same bat station, and I will. God, did I just date myself on that? Probably. Yeah, I just dated myself on that. Never mind. Come on by, and we will have a lot of fun next week. So take care, and until next time.